All right, hey guys, it's Kevin again, and welcome to the next video we have about critical race theory. We've talked about the context, the problem that we have of racism in America, and now we want to do is kind of address what critical race theory teaches, what it is, and we're going to give it kind of an overview in this video, and then the next videos we're going to get more specific and talk about what the Bible says. But let's just go give a pretty big overview of what critical race theory is. If you've never heard about it, now you will have heard about it. So first of all, it started by Karl Marx. And this is something called critical theory. This is different from traditional theory. And traditional theory is just kind of studying culture, studying society, and seeing how society affects all parts of our life. That's traditional theory. But critical theory come along with Karl Marx, and he decided with this theory is that we had to look at the society different, and we had to kind of break it down as to what was wrong with it, what was going on with our society. Where is our culture breaking down? And so the point, traditional theory was mainly to study it, the culture, society. Critical theory is to reform it. And so that's the whole point. Karl Marx wanted to reform society, identify the problems, figure out why there are problems, and then offer up solutions to it. So one of the main tenets of critical theory is that power, the ruling class, is going to create inequity among the people who are not in the ruling class. So you have the ideology of the ruling class. So whoever is in power, and we're going to define what that means in a little bit, but whoever is in power, whoever has authority, and we're going to talk about the word oppressive, whoever is oppressive or has authority over someone else, then their ideology is going to be essentially forced on the people below them, even if that ideology is wrong, even though what they believe and their point of view is tainted or wrong, they're forcing that on the people that are below them. And that power that people have creates inequity among the other people groups. And that's kind of the basis of critical theory. You have the oppressor and you have the oppressed. So you can take a variety of different people groups. And so what we're going to be talking about race mostly for this one. And so you could be talking about white people. In this case, white people are the oppressor, and minorities or black people or other races are the oppressed. Oppressor and oppressed. But it can apply to a multitude of different people groups. And so critical theory is kind of the blanket umbrella term for oppressor versus oppressed. But critical race theory is specifically talking about white people versus black people being oppressor and oppressed. But it can apply to sexual identity. There's critical gender theory as well. There's ones that talk about wealth and all different types of critical theories. But we're only going to talk about critical race theory for this one. The whole point of critical race theory is that there is systemic racism. There is systemic racism. That racism is not just one white person is racist against another black person or a group of black people. It's not that. It's not individualized. It's that the entire system is tainted. The entire system and everything that happens within that system is racist. And the only way to fix it is not to tell, John Doe over there to stop being racist. That's not going to be a solution to the problem. You don't solve the solution one individual at a time. The only way you solve the solution is you just break down the entire system. And that's everything. That's the government. That is the court system. That is our society. That is our laws. That is just everything. Everything that has to do with anything in our society is all racist. And so you have to dismantle all of it and then reconstruct it. And so you'll hear a lot of those terms, deconstruction and reconstruction. Break it all down and then build it back up is the only way. It's not sufficient enough just to tell people to stop being racist and treat people with love and respect. That's not going to do it. You have to break the entire system down. The critical race theory, so the critical theory started with Karl Marx, but the critical race theory, when we're talking about actual race and racist policies, we talk about that come out in the 1980s, and you had a lot of scholars that said, "Oh, we love critical theory. Let's apply this more specifically to race." And so the 1980s is really when this took off, and it's been taught in colleges and universities. Really since the 90s and 2000s. This is very pervasive in the universities across the United States. But critical race theory has been around since the 80s. And there was something else that kind of was invented back then, and that's called intersectionality. And we're going to talk more about that in other videos. But intersectionality essentially is that there are multiple people groups who are in the oppressed category. And so minorities like Black people or Hispanics or Asians or whatever, that would be a minority. And if you are a minority, you are in the oppressed group. But that's just race. And so race would be one intersection that you can kind of go through, but you may intersect in other people groups as well. It's like LGBT. Like if you are a homosexual, you would be oppressed by heterosexual. The heterosexual ruling class would be oppressing the homosexual. So if you're Black and you're homosexual, then you've got two. You've intersected two people groups, and now you've got two intersections where you are doubly oppressed. And so it gets more complicated. But it's a lot more. It can include, if you are a woman, you are oppressed by the men. If you are old, you're oppressed by the young. If you're poor, you're oppressed by the rich. If you are not college educated, you are oppressed by the college educated. And so you have a variety of different people groups who are the oppressed. And the more one of those little check marks that you can get, then you have a much more of a complicated system. But intersectionality came out in the 1980s as well. That's coupled with critical race theory. And the whole really mindset between this is anti-racist and racist policies. So a racist policy, for example, is if you had if you had a job, for example, if you had a company, a Fortune 500 company, and they have managers and supervisors all across the board of this company, and they only had, let's say they had 10% of their supervisors were Black, and 13% of the population are Black. And so if you look at this Fortune 500 company and they've got 10% of their supervisors are Black and 13% are in the country, then that's a racist company because they're not showing equity between Black people and white people because they're not hiring enough. And so that's a racist policy. If you have a fewer number of Black people than you should, then it's a racist company, it's a racist policy. And the way that you fix that is you have an anti-racist view, which says that we're going to create equity in that racist policy. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that you go from your 10% to your 13%, for example. And so what that would mean is you'd have to fire some white people and hire some Black people till you get to that 13% or whatever percent you agree on. And what that's doing is you are being an anti-racist. You are dismantling a racist policy by creating equity in that racist policy. And so a lot of times the consequence of that is, hey, you just got fired because you're white and we don't have enough Black people to make sure that we have equity. So that's an anti-racist and a racist policy. Now you might say, oh, they're both racist, or one's not racist and the other one is. And the whole point of critical theory is it doesn't matter if you're racist if you are creating equity. If you are discriminating against someone who is white, well, they're in the oppressor group. And so as long as you're knocking them down towards the oppressed group, then it's okay. It's not racist if you're doing it that way. It's only racist if the oppressor is essentially doing things that hurt the oppressed. If the oppressed hurt the oppressor, it's not racist, and vice versa. So that is a very brief way to describe critical race theory. We're going to get in a little bit more details in the next video and go through their 4 major tenets. And then after that, we're going to look into what the Bible says about it, and then see, is this a biblical solution or is it not? And so thank you for watching this one, and we'll continue on with the next video.